What was the most porno situation you've ever had? One that I still kick myself for. I work as a gardener, so I'm halfway there already, but at one of my former sites there was an older woman who lived there. She was late 40s, early 50s, but had aged like a fine wine, great body, lovely face, and an attractive personality that made you feel easy around her. She'd jokingly flirt all of the time too, which to then 21-year-old me had me real hot under the collars. One day I was using some rope for a job when she asked if I could help her move something heavy in her apartment. Me being the guy I am agreed, so I went into her apartment with the rope still in hand. Moved the stuff for her and she took notice of my rope, crossed her wrists over and said, "Oh, is that for me, sir?" or something like that, whilst giving me now what I know as the look. I chuckled but left the apartment, where I immediately realized that I had an opportunity to playfully ramp up the flirting and see where it went. I was young and inexperienced, but in hindsight she all but handed me a condom and I used it as a balloon to float away instead. Years ago, my parents were not really happy with my sister after she came out as gay, so she wasn't invited to Thanksgiving. To support her, I went to her gay orphans' Thanksgiving with her friends instead of my parents. While there, I met this woman who I got along with really well, but I figured she was, well, a lesbian. Later, we were washing the dishes, and she says, "I think we're the only two straight people here." I go, "I think so." She says, "I think that means we have to fuck." We did. My coworker came to my office and said, "Come with me." She starts leading me down to the basement where there's never any other people. Turns out she just needed me to carry something heavy. I lost my virginity working at a bar because my boss said to me, "Would you fuck that girl over there?" I said, "Yeah, for sure," and he said, "You're cut, punch out and take her home." To which I had to really wonder if he was fucking with me. But no, he was not. Back when I delivered pizza, I was greeted at the door by a woman wearing the skimpiest of clothing, nearly completely see-through. I think she noticed that I was looking at her nipples and she mentioned her and her husband were swingers. Asked me to come inside, but my anxious ass declined, so she just took off her top and gave me some cash. I had a pest control guy come into my condo without really knocking when I was about 20 years old. I had just gotten out of the shower, so I was in only a bathrobe. I also had just done laundry, so all my delicate like bras, panties and lacy lingerie were hanging around to dry. I have no idea what that poor guy was thinking I was trying to do, but I swear I just didn't realize he was coming. A while back was doing some physical therapy and walking back and forth in some parallel bars. It was me, male, my therapist, female, and a trainee who was shadowing her for a few weeks, male. She needed to check that my glutes were properly activating as I walked, and he needed the experience to know what to look for. So, I was slowly walking back and forth while they shuffled along behind me, a hand on each of my ass cheeks. The situation was normal, professional enough until another therapist, female, walked into the room and sort of froze in surprise, trying not to laugh. It was hard to deny the ridiculousness of it after that. A high school friend's parents were out of town for the weekend, so I was sleeping over at his house. He goes to bed early, but I'm not tired, so I'm downstairs watching TV. His sister, about a year younger, comes in and sits on the other side of the couch. I forget what movie we're watching, but there was a fashion show and all the models came out wearing nothing. Sister asks, "Do guys get hard watching stuff like this?" I wasn't, but started when she asked. I was still not exactly a confident high schooler, but she was cute, and I felt relaxed around her, so I said something like, "Sometimes. Depends." "Why? Do you get wet?" She giggled but didn't say anything for a moment. Then she looked over me and asked if I was hard. I was a little scared that my friend would hear or walk in, but I knew he was upstairs, and I was a horny teen. So I said, "Yeah. Want to see?" She did. I showed her. Got a BJ. Ate her out. Good movie. I have a friend that I've always found attractive, but never really desired a romantic relationship with her. We were friends for probably around 7 years, and nothing ever happened. We rarely even hugged. One night she was over at my place to celebrate my sister's birthday. Pretty much any time we were alone that night she'd bring up how sexually frustrated she was. I just brushed it off as her genuinely complaining about it, and not trying to get some from me. Eventually, I was drunk and very tired. So, I said I was gonna go lay down. She immediately said she'd come join me because she was tired too. Again, I didn't think anything of it. We had shared beds before, and nothing had ever happened. I guess this time was different though. We slept together. And literally nothing has changed between us. We're still great friends. It's been several years since we slept together too. I guess me and her got lucky? Apparently it doesn't often play out how it did for us. Neither of us have ever really wanted to date each other, as far as I know. But to be fair, it also wasn't great sex. Went to a friend's house party and ended up in a foursome with him, his girlfriend, and one of his girlfriend's girlfriends. I had way too much to drink though, so with that on top of the anxiety about the whole situation, I couldn't perform at all. I'm barely a twosome kind of guy, let alone a foursome. No idea how that whole thing happened. The carpenter renovating my room thought I was gay. I'm a straight guy. We were alone in the house. I finished taking a shower and was only in my towel, and I innocuously analyzed his shirtless torso in all its glory, wondering what routine he is doing in the gym. Maybe I was staring too hard. He then approached me and tried to make out with me. I pushed him and laughed and said no. He said he thought I wanted to have sex with him with all the stares I was giving him. Lesson learned, to be more aware how I'm staring at people. A lady invited me to her place for dinner. She failed to mention that she was married, and her husband and kid were at dinner too. It was incredibly awkward, but even more so when we went to room and I see a camera lens poking out from underneath some clothes. I thanked her for dinner and bailed. My mom hired a guy to build us a deck, and I saw him looking at me through my upstairs window on the first day. He was super hot and Russian, and the idea of us being alone and him working while I brought him drinks and snacks was so exciting. Me being an 18-year-old, was already sold into the idea of screwing this contractor. We fucked on the last day of installation. He was a good lay, but the deck turned out like shit. This above-average looking girl in high school took a shower in our boys' cottage during a survival trip in the Ardennes. They wouldn't return to the girls' cottages for a few hours, and she was dirty from spelunking. We chatted while she was showering. I had my back turned because I am a good boy. She turns off the water, and a few moments later she says, "You can turn around now, there's nothing interesting to see anymore." I turned around and she was completely naked. I was completely awestruck and spoke the legendary words, "Nothing to see there indeed," and proceeded to pack my sandwiches for the next day. I probably ruined her self-confidence for a few years with 5 words, but I was completely confuzzled and not romantically interested in her. Makes me kinda sad when I think back about it now. Met a girl through a friend in college. She had a lot of issues with her laptop, so I came over one day and fixed it up for her. She paid me with a blowjob and finished me off on her face. She took a selfie with my phone, and I haven't seen or spoken with her much since. I used to work at a restaurant, and a colleague of mine slipped, spilling all the drinks over me as I was trying to catch her. Since my boss lived above the restaurant, he offered me to take a shower upstairs to clean myself up. I gladly accepted. However, this was never communicated to his wife. So, she thought her husband was in the shower and decided to surprise him. So, she snuck into the bathroom, it didn't have a lock, got naked and pulled the shower curtains open in one quick motion while striking a pose. To her surprise, it wasn't her husband that was showering, it was me. I also happened to be facing the shower curtain as she pulled it open. We both froze for a couple seconds and locked eyes. She closed that curtain as fast as she opened it and apologized about 100 times on her way out of the bathroom. I just started laughing when she had left and fully realized what had just happened. I finished my shower, went back downstairs and told my boss what happened. He busted out laughing and asked if I liked what I saw. I answered with a yes, got a pat on the back and just went back to work. Me and my boss's wife never talked about it, but my boss would sometimes tease his wife with it when only us 3 were present. TL, doctor, got to see my boss's wife full naked while taking a shower. I hooked up with my friend's mom when I was 19 or 20. It was absolutely as awesome as I'd been imagining it since I hit puberty. Edit, so basically, me and a few friends were at my friend's house drinking one night. We were all under the impression that his mom was gone for the night. When it came time to pass out for the evening, instead of opting for the cramped love seat in his living room or on the floor, I decided I'd just crash on his mom's bed instead. Well, 30 or so minutes later, the door creaks open and she turns on the light. No big deal really, I explain why I was up there and began to excuse myself. Not even really thinking anything of it. Then she says, "No, it's okay, I don't mind if you stay." Instant boner. She then undressed right there in front of me and put on one of those little silk nightgown type things and crawled in bed next to me. I'm pretty well frozen with excitement, fear. Apparently, she recognized that. And just went for it. Reached over and slid her hand down my stomach and inside my shorts. After that, I snapped from my brief paralysis and handled business. Afterwards I excused myself downstairs so as to not raise anybody's suspicions in the morning. The childhood best friend who was like a little brother to me and I were on the couch, just hanging out, and suddenly on a whim, I just kissed him and it rapidly devolved into an entire evening of sex. We've been together a little under a year now, and he still jokes about the little brother, sexy older stepsister dynamic, even though we're just regular boyfriend and girlfriend now. Edit, he's a little over a year younger than me, so for 2 months of the year I'm 2 years older than him. He exclusively referred to me as his cougar girlfriend during this time. With my ex-girlfriend, I'm female. We lived in a shitty bedsit, one big-ish room, so only had space for our double bed. This was all well and good until we had an electrician come round to sort the plugs. He was a young-ish lad, around 21, we were only a couple years older at this point. We didn't want to just hover around him, so we kind of half-sat, laid awkwardly on the bed. Trying to make small talk until I couldn't take it anymore and just said, "Well, this is the start to a lot of porn, isn't it?" Meaning nothing of it but that it was funny and awkward and I can't stop myself from saying dumb shit. My girlfriend looking at me and trying not to die laughing, and this poor kid stopped everything he was doing, stared at me, turned bright red, nearly broke his neck turning his head back to the plugs. And we spent the rest of the time with such a weird, awkward tension in the room with a few strictly professional things from him. I was in the army, and I was home for 2 weeks for my mid-tour leave from Iraq. Some of my friends wanted to go out to a bar for one last hurrah before I headed out of town again. One of my buddies invited this girl from his work to meet us there. She wasn't super hot, but she was attractive enough. Wore the librarian glasses and had like DDD breasts. I was pretty buzzed, and she kept talking shit to me, which I later learned was her way of flirting, and it pissed me off, so I left. Well, she got my number from my buddy and kept calling me back to back. I finally answered, and she says, "You've had too much to drink, just turn around and come back to my apartment, it's closer." So, that's what I did. Once I got to her apartment, she answers the door in just a t-shirt with no bra and panties. She's just standing in the doorway, and I asked, "So why did you invite me here?" She responds, "Why do you think?" So, I gently push her against the wall, and kiss her while shoving my hand up her shirt. She gasps, and then gave me a semi-hard slap to the face, but then grabs me by my shirt collar and pulls me into her apartment. She leads me to her bedroom, and right before she takes her shirt off she tells me, "You're leaving for war again, you can do whatever you want to me." We proceeded to have the most just raw, raunchy, kinky sex for the next 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Made it back from Iraq about 7 months later and met up with her again. Lovely girl. My neighbor locked herself out of her townhouse dorm over winter break. I was the only other resident living in the complex at the time. The resident assistant who had a master key bailed to his girlfriend's place 4 hours away and wouldn't be back for another 2 days, but said he may return sooner. If we called the building director, the neighbor would be fined $200 for losing her keys, and the raw whom we all liked would be fired. Offered Lydia, the neighbor, the option of hanging out since it was a townhouse and there was room. She said she would hang out until she could find somewhere else to go, and made a few phone calls that went unanswered. Ordered pizza and watched a movie that evening until she fell asleep on the couch. I put a pillow under her head and a blanket over her and went to bed. Woke up with her next to me in the morning. Spent the next 2 days intermittently having sex, watching movies and making meals. She had this thing about hanging out in only t-shirts, underwear and socks. It seemed like every meal prep was interrupted by us having to put things on simmer and go have sex.